Hi. Please forgive the glasses, but over the last few hours I've been thinking a lot about the passing of George Bush. And when I think about George Bush, I of course have to think about President John F. Kennedy, our only peace president. And me personally, I can't help thinking about John Kennedy unless I think about Jim Garrison. So for the past few hours, been putting together some thoughts here, which I don't think I could ad-lib coherently or in order, so I may have to read from them. But so that it's not too distracting, I will try to add some pictures for you. George Bush died. George Bush, the man who years ago said, if the public really knew what we were up to, they'd chase us down the street and lynch us. George Bush, the man who successfully sabotaged President Jimmy Carter's successful Iranian hostage deal in order for him and Ronald Reagan to get into the White House to make a better one. Truly an act of treason. George Bush, the man whose company, Zapata Oil, became the code name for the CIA's operation at the Bay of Pigs. And George Bush, the only man in America his age who cannot remember where he was on November 22nd, 1963, when they murdered John Kennedy. The moment the internet reported that George Bush had died, you could see it was awash with thousands of questions from the public, asking, now that he is dead, do you think it's possible that the truth about John Kennedy's murder will be brought to life more easily? And the answer is a resounding no. It will only get harder. It is impossible for one man to suppress and bury that truth by himself. It takes the entire government and the entire media, now in the hands of 6 corporations under contract to the government, to bury those truths and continue to lie to us as they do. I mean, look at how they just fell all over themselves, fawning about what a saint George Bush was, as they did years ago, falling all over themselves to report at what a Satan Jim Garrison was. The CIA's files can remain buried and will remain buried, but Jim Garrison's files need not be. All political assassinations in the United States begin and end with the murder of John Kennedy, which was solved by Jim Garrison in 1967 and proven in 1969 when a jury found Shaw guilty of perjury, but the government stepped in and squelched that trial. And the media never reported it, because that's what the government and the media do. They squelch and they do not report any truth that may point to the truth. When Mark Lane's Rush to Judgment, published in England, eviscerated and disemboweled and castrated the Warren Report, what did the Central Intelligence Agency do? They set up a plan to discredit any conspiracy theories. And look what happened with Geraldo Rivera when he showed the Zapruder film late night on ABC with Charles Grodin and Dick Gregory. And it pointed out that Dan Rather had lied to us about the direction John Kennedy's head went when struck by the fatal shot. It obviously went backwards, as you could see from the film, and outraged Americans by the millions demanded Congress start a new investigation. So the House Select Committee was set up. But when Richard Sprague, the tough Philadelphia lawyer first appointed to be the lead investigator, said, we're going to solve it because we're going to investigate and not use the FBI and the CIA's Project Mockingbird's assets, 400 of them in the media, they decided they would get rid of them along with the CIA assets in the Senate and Congress, and they appointed G. Robert Blakey, who turned everything over to the CIA. Only an accidental dictabelt found by Dallas reporter Gary Mack, which recorded the gunshots, proving there were more than 3 gunshots, made this House Select Committee conclude 4 shots had been fired, therefore a conspiracy existed, turned the files over to the Justice Department and said for them to pursue it. But they did not. They just shut it down. When Congress passed the JFK Records Assassinations Act as a result of the huge popularity of Oliver Stone's excellent film JFK, they mandated that a certain date be set up for the release of those files. The CIA said, though, we're not releasing those files because of national security. Well, after a 55-year-old murder, what possible national security issues could there be, unless, of course, the CIA was the USA? For decades now, we've seen hundreds of these so-called truth-seeking assassination conferences held everywhere from Dallas to New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Washington, New York. What have they accomplished in all of those years and all of those conferences in getting that cold case opened at the Justice Department? Absolutely nothing. They have been nothing but book clubs, albeit very good book clubs. This year in Dallas, 2 excellent books were introduced: The Inheritance and At the Cold Shoulder of History. And like all other excellent books, all they do is produce truths and facts that reinforce Jim Garrison's case that elements of the Central Intelligence Agency murdered our president, as he said on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. All of these conferences should have been entirely focused on Jim Garrison and on the trial of Clay Shaw. Instead, they have been distracting us with Lee Harvey Oswald, who is, sadly, the least important person in this case because he was vindicated in 1967. But instead, we have had 2 dreadful mock trials which set the cause back another 20 or 30 years. He was sadly the patsy they killed. He was only one of 2 or 3 that the CIA had set up in case something went wrong in Dallas. And something did go wrong. And Jim Garrison discovered it. And it's in the film also. It is a document from the CIA that says, if we do not help Clay Shaw, Jim Garrison will indeed get a conviction of him for conspiracy in the murder of John Kennedy. If Project Mockingbird can take over all the mainstream media, from television to magazines to newspapers, they can certainly infiltrate these little sites and begin to distract us with other nonsense conspiracy things about Bigfoot and UFOs, when the main focus should be entirely on JFK. Many of the people I know involved with these sites are very, very sincere, dedicated people, and they keep coming away saying, the truth will set you free. We have known the truth for years. I say to them, has it set you free? They cannot answer, because it has not set them free. It has probably not set free the ghost of Jim Garrison, because as George Washington and any other revolutionary will tell you, the truth does not set you free. Only action sets you free. But there will be none taken. Every November 22nd, instead of these conferences, they should have been gathered at the Justice Department. It should have been America's Bastille Day, the day for truth. Will that ever happen? No, it will not. Do I think any march or action will ever be taken in Washington? No, I do not think so. The reason being, we have been turned into an apathetic, pathetic, uninformed, uninterested nation of sheep. We need a shepherd, and they kill the shepherds. We have become a pathetically celebrity-soaked culture that will only follow the rich and the famous. And the only 2 people that I can think of who possibly could gather thousands of us to march on to Washington are Oliver Stone and Jesse Ventura. But since that's not already happened, it's not likely to happen, and it's justifiable and understandable. They may fear for their lives or the lives of their family or for future employment. So, what do we conclude? You have to conclude that George Bush and his not so deep come to the surface fascist state has won. Is there any action possible? Maybe from the grave. From whose grave? From Jim Garrison's grave. What do you think Jim Garrison would do if he were alive today and he could see the cowardice and the corruption and the perpetual war state of the United States as it exists right now? My feeling is that he would release the files and let the American public be the judge and jury of whether or not he was right. And I think if he did that, he would be thoroughly vindicated as would the millions and millions of people who believe in him. If you look at Jim Garrison's gravestone, it says, "Let justice be done though the heavens fall." Let the heavens fall. Let justice be done. So in the memory of Jim Garrison, in the memory of John Kennedy, our only peace president, and to President Trump, who is probably realizing what Jim Garrison said years ago after they murdered John Kennedy, no president will ever get to run the United States. So for Mr. Trump, President Trump, and any future president, we are going to start to release Jim Garrison's files. And we are going to begin with the most important file, that is the file of Clay Shaw, the file that led Mr. Garrison to bring him into a courtroom. After that, we will begin to release hundreds and hundreds of others. So keep your eye open for them. Good luck. And as Scrooge said, God bless us, one and all.